Welcome to my channel Forever Celeb. Catherine Zeta-Jones looked like the woman Hollywood could never break. Elegant, controlled, and untouchable beneath every camera flash. In the Mask of Zorro, she became Elena Montero, fierce and unforgettable. In Chicago, she became Velma Kelly, turning discipline, music, and pain into an Academy Award. For millions, she was old Hollywood Grace reborn, beauty with strength, glamour with soul, perfection was the illusion. Behind the polished smile was a woman carrying pressure no red carpet could soften, a childhood that began in a hospital, years of rejection before Hollywood acknowledged her, a husband facing stage 4 cancer, 2 children she fought to protect from fear, and a private battle with bipolar II disorder that she eventually refused to hide. Now at 56, Catherine Zeta-Jones is more than a wife, a mother, or a survivor. She is a woman who learned to steady herself, again and again, even as the world mistook her composure for peace. Catherine Zeta-Jones was born on September 25, 1969, in Swansea, Wales, into a modest home where her father ran the family business and her mother stitched clothing with patient hands. Before she was old enough to understand fear, doctors performed an emergency tracheotomy on her, leaving a small scar beneath her chin. She carried it without apology. "I have a broken nose. I had a tracheotomy when I was a kid," she said years later, matter-of-factly. Life had taught her early that even breath could be precious. When Catherine was young, the family had a stroke of fortune, a £100,000 bingo win, and rather than spend it on comfort alone, her parents invested it in their daughter's talent. Dance lessons, voice training, costumes, travel to auditions. The business strengthened. The family moved to a better neighborhood. And a little girl who was already performing in church halls at 4 was given room to move toward the stage. By 11, she was playing Annie. By 13, she was in Bugsy Malone. At 14, she joined the national tour of the Pajama Game. At 15, she left school. Other children had slow weekends and careless afternoons. Catherine had rehearsal schedules, tired feet, and the pressure to look ready before she had learned how to rest. She remembered those early audition days without sentimentality. "I would queue up for auditions and then change my costume or put on a different leotard and audition again." Grace is built from endurance. She was learning that before most people her age had finished their GCSEs, her first major screen appearance, in the 1990 French fantasy film 1001 Nights, came and went without fanfare. The role that should have announced her arrival passed quietly. For a young actress who had traded school, privacy, and ordinary adolescence for performance, that silence cut deep. She returned to Britain and rebuilt herself role by role. From 1991 to 1993, as Mariette in The Darling Buds of May, she became beloved across the United Kingdom, welcomed into living rooms with warmth, admiration, and genuine affection. Viewers saw freshness and charm. Beneath it, Catherine was doing the harder work of rebuilding confidence after disappointment. America was colder. When she moved toward Hollywood, she arrived not as a protected star but as a talented British actress still waiting for the industry to decide she mattered. Roles in Splitting Heirs, Christopher Columbus, The Discovery, and The Phantom gave her visibility but not momentum. The phone didn't ring the way Hope had promised. The most painful wound wasn't rejection, it was being seen by everyone and still not truly chosen. Then Steven Spielberg noticed her work in the 1996 miniseries Titanic, and that attention helped guide her toward The Mask of Zorro. The role demanded far more than beauty in costume. Catherine trained in sword fighting, horseback riding, flamenco, dialect, and physical movement until every sign of effort had been buried beneath the appearance of ease. She later admitted she wasn't naturally comfortable on horseback. She trained until that stopped mattering. The Mask of Zorro earned over $250 million against a $95 million budget, and Hollywood could no longer look past her. In Entrapment, a single laser beam sequence turned her into an image audiences couldn't shake. In Traffic, she stripped away glamour and played a conflicted wife with such raw intensity that she earned a Screen Actors Guild Award and a Golden Globe nomination. Role by role, she was no longer the beautiful face executives had once underestimated. She was discipline, danger, intelligence, and hunger wrapped in classic Hollywood grace. Then came Chicago. She was pregnant with her daughter Karis when she stepped into Velma Kelly. Singing, dancing, and commanding every frame while carrying a baby. At the Academy Awards, 10 days before she gave birth, she stood with a rounded belly and an Oscar in her hand. "I had my child 10 days after the Oscars," she said simply. That image wasn't just victory. It was the answer to every room that had once treated her as replaceable. Catherine met Michael Douglas at the Deauville Film Festival in 1998. He was 53, a two-time Oscar winner with a lifetime of fame behind him. She was 28, newly radiant from Zorro, still learning how to protect herself from an industry that praised beauty while often missing the person beneath it. They shared the same birthday, September 25. The 25 years between them carried history, reputation, and public judgment from the moment their relationship became known. When Michael first told her he wanted to father her children, the line landed too boldly. Catherine stepped back. She had worked too hard to become herself to be swept up by charm without caution. What changed things was less about glamour and more about attention. He sent flowers. Then came months of long-distance conversations, beyond red carpets and cameras, about parents, childhood, ambition, fear, and the strange loneliness that can live inside success. Michael didn't seem drawn only to the face Hollywood had celebrated. He seemed interested in the woman who had sacrificed her childhood for a stage, crossed an ocean for a dream, and learned to stand after disappointment. Her caution softened. On New Year's Eve 1999 in Aspen, both of them sick with the flu and wrapped in blankets instead of dressed for any event, Michael proposed. She said yes. They married on November 18, 2000, at the Plaza Hotel in New York. The world noticed the famous names, the designer gown, the grandeur. The quieter image was Dylan, only 3 months old, already part of the promise they were making. Even that day taught her how little privacy fame allowed. Unauthorized photographs appeared despite their exclusive arrangement with another publication. Catherine described the experience as feeling violated. A day meant to belong to love became another reminder that celebrity could enter even the most sacred rooms. Dylan arrived in 2000. Karis followed in 2003. To give their children a quieter life, the family moved to Bermuda, away from Hollywood's machinery, where ordinary mornings and children's voices could take precedence over premieres. The real marriage would be tested not in ceremony but later, in illness, exhaustion, and the difficult grace of staying when life became heavy. By 2010, multiple pressures had converged on the family. Michael's eldest son Cameron was navigating serious legal difficulties. Then Michael was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. The house changed. Meals grew smaller, voices quieter. Dylan and Karis still needed their mother to make fear look manageable. Catherine became the shield around the family. At the hospital, she watched treatment take its toll. At home, she managed everything that children required while her husband underwent one of the most grueling medical experiences a person can face. She carried terror gently enough that it wouldn't spill onto the people who needed her most. Beneath her composed exterior, she was also managing her own private battle. Bipolar II disorder had been part of her life, bringing its own cycles of emotional intensity and extended darkness. The combination of caregiving, public scrutiny, a husband's serious illness, and her own mental health, all simultaneously, was an impossible weight to carry alone. In 2011, Catherine sought treatment for bipolar II disorder at a mental health facility in Connecticut. When that news became public, she answered with characteristic directness, "This is a disorder that affects millions of people and I am one of them." She added that if speaking openly helped even one person seek support, it was worth it. That was not a performance of courage. It was courage. By 2013, Catherine and Michael took time apart to evaluate their marriage. Two exhausted people on opposite sides of years of fear, still tied by history, children, and a love stretched almost to its limit. There were quiet rooms, careful conversations, and the hard question of whether two wounded people could find their way back to each other. They did, not through grand gestures, but through ordinary life. Time gave the family room to breathe. Cameron's later release from prison and his path into fatherhood brought a softer chapter to a family that had carried years of worry. Catherine and Michael rebuilt without turning the process into spectacle. Patience, privacy, forgiveness, and the willingness to meet each other again without pretending the hard years hadn't happened. The strongest image of their marriage is not the Plaza Hotel or any red carpet. It is two people who chose ordinary mornings after extraordinary strain. At 56, Catherine has returned to the screen as Morticia Addams in Wednesday, bringing a darker, more layered elegance that seemed shaped by everything she had lived through. She was no longer chasing youth. She was demonstrating what maturity becomes when a woman accepts her shadows without surrendering to them. Bipolar II disorder remains part of her life. Managed with honesty, structure, and the kind of daily discipline that never makes the entertainment pages. She has spoken about mental health publicly and without apology, making vulnerability look dignified and making seeking help feel human. For many people watching from their own quiet rooms, that honesty may be one of the most lasting gifts she has given. Dylan and Karis are grown. The urgent mornings of school runs and children's routines have softened into a different season. One of pride, tenderness, and the particular ache of watching children step into their own lives. The marriage that began under so much public scrutiny now carries a quieter meaning, two people who understand the cost of staying, and chose it anyway. Peace arrived for Catherine slowly, the way it usually does, not through the absence of difficulty but through surviving it enough times to trust yourself on the other side. A bingo win may have opened one door in Swansea. Every harder door since then, she walked through herself. Her story was never really about luck. It was about a little girl who first learned that breath could be precious, a teenager who left school with no safety net, an actress who smiled on red carpets while private wounds stayed hidden, and a woman who stood beneath Oscar lights with victory in her hands and years of quiet endurance behind her eyes. Beauty made the world look at her. Endurance made the world remember her. The scar beneath her chin is not just a childhood memory. It is a small, honest reminder that survival rarely announces itself, and that the people who carry it with the most grace are often the ones who have been fighting the longest.